Hello, this is Paul again. I've been meaning to do a few more videos to put on our training page, but there's been a lot going on. Who'd have thunk that it would be so tiring to be in a stay-at-home situation? But I've been pretty busy. I've been getting a lot of projects done to prepare better for uh, the chance that things could get worse. I don't really expect them to get worse, but I'm totally realizing that they could. And so tonight, I'm going to talk to you about what you should do with your check, the stimulus check. I'm not going to, tell you got to do what I say because obviously you can do whatever you want. But I just have some advice. Number one, if you need that check to pay the bills, pay the bills. That's it. But I do know that there are several people who are going to have some money left over after paying the bills. And for those people, I have some suggestions as to what to do and what to buy to prepare for the chance that things could get a little worse than they are now. And since we're dealing with a firearms training group of sorts, most of you on this list have had some training by me, or a couple of you are waiting to get some training by me in under your belt. Um, so um, that's that's going to be where I'm going to start is with firearms protection. It's important that we have the ability to protect ourselves. Um, what happens if half the police force comes down with coronavirus? It could happen. It would not be unprecedented for that to happen. And other outbreaks in other places. Remember, there are certain people that don't get the opportunity to stay at home, and they are police officers, EMTs, nurses, doctors, and other people in important roles, societal roles. And so they don't get the opportunity to stay at home and avoid what some of us are able to avoid. If you are in that position where you can stay at home, stay at home. Avoid the coronavirus. Flatten the curve. They are right about that. That would be. It's great if we can flatten the curve, and the hospitals are able to take care of it. But some of us, even on this group, I know at least two on this group who are in a high vulnerability position, I suppose. I think I'm saying it wrong, but you know what I mean. I think we have an EMT and a registered nurse in the group. And so, pray for those folks. They are doing very important work, but it's in a high risk work, especially in this environment. So, um, but nonetheless, what I was saying, back to the original subject, uh, uh, if you get your money and you can spare a little, some things I would advise. Number one, don't waste it on something frivolous. If you had that really nice clothing item you really wanted, it's probably not a good time. I don't think that would be a good long-term investment. I'm at the age where I'm making decisions on what I buy, and some of these things I think, wow, this item I just bought might outlast me. And you should think in terms of a long-term investment. So I recommend if you do not have a firearm, and I think most of you do on this list, but if you don't, be sure to get one. The first one I would get, the first one on my list, would be a pistol. I would recommend in a 9 millimeter. I know there are other calibers, and we can debate all day about it. But the truth of the matter is, of all the major calibers, 9mm is the least expensive to buy the ammunition for. Therefore, you are more likely to train with that said gun, and that's why I recommend 9mm. Also, if you're looking and you're looking at a brand, my personal recommendation is a Glock. Not a Glockhead, not a Glockophile, but I do recognize um, the value. They cost a little bit more than some other brands. They're kind of lower mid-range in the pricing, um, but in the long run, you save money if you buy accessories, magazines, and things like that for them. They're also pretty inexpensive to fix, and so I do recommend a Glock. If you can't afford a Glock, Smith & Wesson MMPs are fine. They're very good. They're excellent quality. If you have lots of money and you really want to blow it on something expensive, get a SIG. It's a fine gun, but it just costs more than the others. Trying to think, that's really the only ones I recommend. I do recommend also a striker fired pistol, semi-automatic striker fired, because the trigger pulls the same for every shot. And in my time in law enforcement, I know that at qualification time, most cops would tell me, I know I missed the first shot when they used to use the old double action, single action pistols because they had different trigger pull for different shots. So striker fired is same trigger pull every shot. I recommend Glock, Smith & Wesson MMP, um, or if you really got money to blow, buy a SIG. But of those, the middle of the road as far as price is the Glock. The quality is great. The accessories are cheaper than all the rest, and far, far more of them. I can actually build an entire Glock pistol, a Glock knockoff, with not using a single part made by Glock, because everyone makes duplicate parts of the Glock pistol, and you can get them anywhere. All right, if you have a pistol already, though, don't switch to Glock 9mm because of this. Stick with what you got, but make sure you have a few extra magazines and some ammo for it. I recommend for all pistols having at least 5 magazines per pistol. Now, in a standard loadout for law enforcement, if you look at a cop, he's going to have a gun and 2 spare magazines minimum. Sometimes you see cops carrying 3 spare magazines. What you may not see is they probably have a backup gun somewhere on them. But make sure you have at least, I would say, 5 magazines. If one messes up on you, you still got another spare that you have backup. So if you've got your gun already and you're looking around and you say, man, I only have 2 mags, the 2 mags that came with it, or 1, order some more. Chris, who's on our group, let me look here. He's on our group, and he has a sales place. And I was looking over his inventory, and he's got a lot of magazines, tons and tons of magazines. And it is option 3 outfitters. So if you're listening to this video on Facebook, he put a sales thing, and it should be right underneath this video. So you can look there. He says he's showing that he has plenty of ammo. Unfortunately, I don't see anything in 9mm at his website, but he's going to be getting that in. He says in a couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for it. The other reason I like 9mm too is it's generally speaking pretty easy to get. the ammunition for it. Not only is it inexpensive, almost everyone has it. Now in this rush, some ammo isn't there. I have seen 9mm online at other spots, and it's available. You can get it. I don't tend to buy in these kind of rushes. I buy when no one's looking for it, no one cares, and there's no rush for it because the prices are cheaper. And I buy a little ahead, and you should too. But right now, you got to get what you can get. All right, next on my list is if you already have a handgun and you have plenty of magazines and some good practice ammo for it and defensive ammo, you could also would consider a semi-automatic rifle. And by that, I specifically mean something in the 223 or 5.56 caliber. Those two calibers are almost identical. 5.56 is the military designation, 223 is the civilian. Although if you have something that's only labeled for 223, you're not supposed to shoot 5.56 through it. Just to clarify that. If you have something labeled 5.56, you can shoot both through it. Kind of like the 357 Magnum and the 38 Special thing. I recommend a semi-automatic rifle in that caliber. Um, of that caliber, there's only two that's super popular. The AR-15, which is what I recommend. They're excellent. You can buy a decent one for under six or $700. In normal times, it's a little weird now, so you may have to spend a little bit more. Also, if you can't find one of those, a Ruger Mini 14 is also an excellent gun. The only drawback to the Mini 14 is that parts and accessories are far more expensive than the AR-15. Magazine for Mini 14 they're harder to come by, and they generally cost about double of a good AR-15 magazine. So that's something else. Now, if you can't afford, if you've got a handgun already, and you're thinking, well, I would like a long gun, but I can't really afford a rifle, that's pretty expensive. You look into a 12 gauge shotgun. The Mossberg Maverick 88 costs right in the $200 to $250 range. 12 gauge ammo's been easy to get. I every time I'm in Walmart, they have tons of 12 gauge ammo laying around. It's a fairly versatile gun. You can shoot anything from a squirrel to a grizzly bear, depending on what ammo you put in it. There's a lot of ammo choices for it. You'd have to learn more how to fire it properly and what ammo choices to make. It's a little bit more difficult to learn than the other two choices I've mentioned, but this would probably be in addition to already owning a handgun. And if you can't afford a rifle, a shotgun would be good. But let's say you need most of that money to pay the rent and buy some food. I understand, but you'd still like a um, gun for defense. What would be my bare minimum gun? Well, the truth is, you could always go with a 22 rifle, and the one I recommend in that range is a Ruger 10/22. They're about $225 at Walmart. Last time I was in Walmart just a few days ago, they had one on the shelf right there. I don't recommend buying at Walmart. I'm just saying they're there to give you a price idea. I would rather you should try to use one of the local gun shops, but in this time and environment, you may not be able to. So Walmart's there; they're available. A Ruger 10/22 is excellent. Lot of backup for them. In other words, you can get parts almost anywhere for them, and that's why I recommend them over the rest of the the all the different 22 rifles available. I'll tell you a little story on that, just real quick. When I was a kid, we grew up with a rifle in our closet. It was a 22. It was made by Ithaca, which is a company. I believe they're still in operation. They're out of New York. It's a great gun. They're very reliable. Shot every time we tried to shoot it. Uh, we had one magazine for it, and my younger brother lost it while hunting. Lost the magazine, not the gun. I spent 5 years looking for a new magazine for that gun, and later on, I ended up my another relative ended up with that gun, and I got a call the other day from that relative, and he said, "Paul, it's not feeding right," which means the magazine's messed up on it. The spring's probably worn out. It's gonna it's about a 60-year-old spring by now, so it's due. And I'm like, oh man, getting a magazine for that again is going to be tough. So that's why I recommend something that's fairly um, easy to acquire. Ruger 1022. You'd be hard pressed to go into a gun shop that doesn't have a magazine for that, that doesn't have some basic parts for that. A lot of them will have even a different stock if you want it or whatever. That's why I recommend that. That's also why I recommend the Glock. That's also why I recommend the AR-15. Those things play into it with the shotgun. The Mossberg Maverick 88 for a couple $100 is fine. You can get stuff for it. If you can afford a little bit better, I would go with the Mossberg 500 or a Remington 870. They're both excellent. Um, Winchester makes one, and I cannot remember the model of it. Excellent gun. Nothing wrong with any of them. And when it comes to shotguns, there's several good ones that are not that expensive. And the key is make sure you get some ammo with it. Make sure you understand how to use it in this environment. I have a young man that just bought a gun, and he's never fired it yet, and it's hard to get to the range lately. So dry fire, learn all your skills in the dry fire area. It's great. Now, let's say you get your check and you said, Paul, okay, yeah, you're right. I am going to step it up in certain areas of preparedness. Good. You got your gun. You got maybe a long gun to go with it. Fine. Or you got a handgun and a 22 rifle. If that's all you can afford, that's great too. You got some backup ammo. You got some ammo in reserve. Great. You also need to survive in the food department. Why do I say that? I mean, the grocery stores are open. Everything's great, right? Well, our economy is a little tipsy. Um, I think we're going to recover just fine, but there's no guarantees. I do recommend having as much food as you can afford on hand. Now, if you can afford 50 years supply, nah, that's probably too much. But you need to set aside some some food that'll keep. If you're um, talented, go down to Walmart and buy some canning jars. They still got them last I checked. And buy some canning equipment and learn to can. There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube. You can learn how to can very well from from YouTube. Uh, that would be a great thing to do. That way you could put a garden in the backyard and store your excess. The other day, the the tomato packing plants were getting rid of tomatoes that would normally go to restaurants because all the restaurants are closed. $5 a box, and I bought 6 boxes. They sold me 6 for the price of 5, so I ended up at about 4 something a box. And my wife canned tons of tomatoes, almost 100 quarts. uh, what a bargain! And it's a skill. that we can use when we need it. But be ready in the food department. I hope we don't have to use any stored food. But on the other hand, it's already April. And we live in Florida. At least most of the folks on this list live in Florida. I think everyone does. Um, be sure, uh, be sure that you're ready for hurricane season too. Wow, what a 1-2 punch that would be for Florida. I hope that doesn't. We don't have any hurricanes this year, but uh, you still need that backup for that. Be ready. Pray that things don't turn out terribly bad. I don't think they will, but you got to understand things can be on the horizon when when bad things happen to an economy. Sometimes it takes a while to dig back out of it, and we need to understand that not everything is going to be perfect. It may take a while for us to dig back out of it economically in this country. So use that money wisely, is what I'm saying. Don't go out and buy fancy new whatever doodad you wanted to buy. Don't buy a big stinking television or something along that line. Buy something that'll have a long-term impact in protection and in preservation. Think of the things you might need. If you need, if say you've got those two areas covered, and some of you do, and get with, send a message to Chris. I think he'll be glad to point you to some medical things you might want. You know, a great medical kit, a great first aid kit, uh, a blowout kit, which is a kit for something very, very serious damage done. Somebody tries to shoot at you and they get you. You may win the fight, but if you don't have something to stop the bleeding right then and there, you may lose your life anyway. So get with him. He'll direct you to some things. If you have any questions, be sure to private message me, text me, call me, however you can get a hold of me. Just get a hold of me. I'll be glad to help you in any way I can. If you do get that new gun and you're able to get it with that money and you need different sights on it or whatever doodad you need, let me know. I may be able to do whatever you need done, and I'll do it for the joy of knowing you're preparing yourselves. So, all right. Thank you. God bless. Don't forget to pray for those who are on the front lines in this. Have a great evening.